one of the things that justification does is it removes the guilt and it removes the penalty. These two things. Justification removes the guilt of sin, removes the penalty of sin. Why? Because sin is not on my account anymore. That term justification is that legal term which means that what is there, what is owed, that I don't have to pay. It's already been paid. And so it doesn't mean that the sin was not committed. It doesn't mean that the sin isn't, recognized that I've done this. What it means is that sin is paid and I don't have to pay it. So it's just as if, it's actually done and it's accounted for and the wrath of God is satisfied. In other words, the penalty is satisfied. As we look to this, I think it's important to see one, there's no guilt and there's no penalty. Now, as we look to this, let's just read through these first couple of verses because I want to just take this as more of a whole. Now there is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. And so as he says in Romans 8:1, there's no condemnation. I think it's important to recognize that the key to this chapter is it begins with no condemnation, it ends with no separation. This is a great thing for the believer. We'll look at that in the latter part in 3 weeks, but for right now it says this, for the law of the Spirit, verse 2, of life in Christ Jesus has made me free from the law of sin and death. Now, what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, God did by sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh. On account of sin, he condemned sin in the flesh. Now, when we recognize that what this justification does is remove the penalty, something that is, I'm going to give you 3 verses. Jot these down if you're a note taker. But the first is this. I just want to give you this passage not as an idea of what's, well, it is an idea of what's going on, but what this first passage is in Deuteronomy chapter 25, it says this, in the first 2 verses, that it says this, if there's a guilty verdict, then there is a punishment. So that's all I want to share with you. That in the law, it says that if there's a guilty verdict, then there's a punishment. In other words, if you are at a court and they say not guilty, then guess what? You don't go to jail. You don't pay a fine. You just walk away. There's no punishment. But if you're guilty, then what? Then you go to jail. Then you pay a fine. Do you understand? So without guilt, no penalty, nothing. But when there's guilt, when the verdict is guilty, then there's a punishment.